So, hello everyone, and welcome Tracy on Flower
Thank
Power
you.
Bach Flower Wisdom podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And it's good to have you here. So, Tracy, do you know that, I was looking for people on Facebook, who can share their experiences with Bach remedies.
Yeah,
And I don't
nice.
know from where I found your profile. And, it's like, we were destined to meet today.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. I love talking about this. So I'm happy that you found me.
And you will be surprised to know that more than 20 years back, my mother, she was giving me Bach flower remedies, not only to me and to even to my siblings, and even to my neighbors. She was
Yeah,
giving
nice.
Bach flower remedies, and she learned all about Bach flower remedies from her homeopath friend, who was a homeopathic doctor.
So that's where I came into it because I was a homeopathic doctor. I still am.
Yeah.
Although I don't practice strictly homeopathy where I live. That's kind of a long story to do with government regulations. But I encompass still homeopathy, Bach Flowers, bioenergetic healing in my overall practice. So that's where I came to it because I've been practicing now for 23 years.
So, earlier, I used to think like Bach flower remedies are very popular among homeopathic doctors. And,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also
but
because Edward Bach he's so well known in homeopathy for creating the bowel nosodes. It's something else that I use in my practice. So he was not practicing as a homeopath. He was
he was a
researcher, normal physician, and also a researcher in biology.
Yeah.
So, he was not practicing as a homeopath, but he was developing a whole branch of our remedies that he's very well known for.
Yeah.
So, he has a good pedigree from homeopathy already before he started to develop these flowers. So we're watching, we have a high regard for his work already. And so it's a kind of natural extension.
Yeah, but I still wonder like why homeopaths are, I know there are certain homeopaths who are approaching me for Bach flowers, and I wonder like why they still not realize the healing potential of these remedies and make use in their own practice,
Well, I can tell you from my own perspective as a homeopath that I always considered Bach flowers to be a kind of a poor cousin of homeopathy, like the poor country cousin who, sometimes can bring something nice, but that was on a much lower level in terms of the capacity for dealing with everything, the capacity for healing at a very deep level, the capacity for making changes, big physical changes or whatever. I always thought that they're really to address emotional disturbances more than anything else. And it's only in the last few months for me that I am watching Bach flowers outperform homeopathy on every level. And it's a big challenge to my ego because I've been practicing and studying homeopathy, and I have bookshelf after bookshelf of remedies. I mean, I have hundreds of books about homeopathy, and I have thousands of remedies here in my office where I'm my dispensary. I've really been so invested in homeopathy that it's really hard to believe what I'm seeing, but it's really, really true. And it came to me through another route, as you were just describing to me before we started on the call, right? It came to me through an intuition via work that I'm doing on my own, upgrade of consciousness, of my own personal expansion, that I wanted to be able to combine that work with, at first I thought I would combine it with homeopathy, and it was so complex to imagine how to begin. And somehow, I had this intuitive hit that I should do it with with Bach Flowers, and
Yeah.
was fantastic.
So, Tracy, you know, because you have practiced homeopathy and Bach Flower remedies also, both. What is the difference between these two type of healing modalities, I will say?
It's the simple one is that homeopathy is depends completely for the prescription on a matching like cures like. So the remedies are known for producing certain range of symptoms in healthy people. That's where we get the information. And some of it is clinical information where practitioners are describing cured symptoms, but mostly we have these provings where people are taking a remedy and then under certain conditions they are recording the symptoms that they have, and these get collated into our literature. So we're looking to match the symptom picture of the patient to the symptom picture of the remedy to get a perfect match, the perfect healing match. So it's like you're looking for the vibration that is the one that's going to activate the signal already active in your body to neutralize it. And Bach flowers are not used in this way of like cures like in some way. They are more a portal to opening up some frequency that is blocked in your system, right? Even Dr. Bach said that they sort of give you access to your connection to divinity, source, inner self, whatever you want to call it. We have access to whatever is supporting our life force, which is blocked. That, on the emotional, spiritual level, something is blocked, and the flowers restore our access to a natural flow of connection. So it's a different philosophy in a sense that the homeopathy is trying to, let's say it creates a mirror for your vital force to be able to clearly see the disease process, to clearly see what's wrong, and to say, to be able to look at itself like a mirror, because you're doing this like matching, matching the similars. Your vital force can see this mirror image and it says, oh, now I know what to do to make it better. Whereas Bach flowers are just opening a door that's closed so that you can restore your access to this flow of spiritual energy, information, whatever it might be. So of course, like if we talk about healing, maybe we're just using different words to describe the same thing, but it seems to me that what Dr. Bach knew very well about homeopathy, and he did not make homeopathy. He was making something very pure. These remedies are not dynamized, they're not potentized in the same way that we do in homeopathy, where we're in a homeopathy you're taking some extract of the whole plant. Even if you decide to use the seed or the bark or whatever it might be, you are crushing it in a mortar and pestle with milk sugar, and you're diluting many times, and then the dilutions more and more function to let go of the physical part that's not necessary. So we don't need the fibers, we don't need the colors, we don't need the molecules. We're looking for the frequency of that substance. And Dr. Bach found a way to go straight there, that he does not take an extract in alcohol and glycerin, and he put the flower in a bowl of water and put it in the sun. And so we get only the frequency. We're not ever dealing with the plant fibers or the molecules of color. It's the mode of preparation of these medicines are completely different, but arriving to a very similar end, which is an energetic medicinal substance.
Yeah, but I think with batch flowers, we are not targeting the physical symptoms mostly. I mean,
Correct.
maybe in
Correct.
future, maybe we are able to, because there.
Homeopathy has a lot of homeopathy has a lot of information about mental, emotional, spiritual symptoms
Uh-huh,
in addition to the physical. So
uh-huh,
the Bach Flower remedies don't have any indications, certainly not from Dr. Bach,
mhm.
about physical, going directly with physical symptoms. You can prescribe homeopathy if you fall down from the roof, you take arnica. I mean, there
Yeah.
are definitely remedies that are known for controlling inflammation, for swelling, for pain, for lacerations. We have remedies that are primarily used for
Mhm,
physical symptoms, but all of those remedies have a very rich emotional profile. So they can be
mhm,
used as constitutional remedies
mhm,
uh, for to help someone on a very profound level, even
mhm.
based on their personality type or their um, uh, more emotional, mental way of being in the world. We
Mhm.
do have that in homeopathy, but the Bach flowers are strictly, in that realm, let's say.
And it's easy to practice. I think his idea was to find a healing system which is easy and available to everybody, and without
Exactly.
without understanding too much, and because there is no potency also here, so anybody can
Yeah,
use safely.
exactly. Exactly.
So, Tracy, I believe you practiced for more than 20 years homeopathy, and
Hmm.
then you
Hmm.
uh, came across batch flowers, or I don't know. I mean, I'm not aware if you knew about batch flowers before. So, what convinced you to take batch flowers seriously?
It was part of my training in homeopathy. We learned
Uh-huh,
about Bach flowers,
uh-huh,
20 whatever years ago. So, I mean, it was definitely something that was respected and taken seriously. And I used them all along. But I'll tell you the first experience that I had that really, it's 4 or 5 years ago now.
mhm,
And I had kind of put it out of my mind, but it was always there, you know, stimulating me to know more. That I was treating a patient in my homeopathy practice, and the story was that the patient was a young man who had been to see me for homeopathy because he had very, very bad eczema on his hands.
mhm,
And when I treated him with homeopathy, despite trying to be gentle, homeopathy often involves a kind of a flare up or a worsening, an aggravation, we call it, aggravation of the symptoms on the way to healing.
mhm,
It's part of how the body, you know, cleans itself from something inside that's supporting this, symptom that we can see. And when I treated him, he had this flare up and then he freaked out and he didn't want to use homeopathy anymore, so I didn't see him again after that. But his mother was an acquaintance of mine, and she came to me some years later with a strange problem. She said that her son had developed some kind of mental condition,
mhm.
like a psychiatric condition, that his personality had changed so much that she almost didn't recognize him anymore. He had become hard and cruel and previously he had a very cheerful, loving disposition, and this was gone, and it was replaced with a very difficult person to be around.
Mhm.
And she came to me because she didn't know what to do. She needed help, and he was refusing all kinds of help. So when I always ask, because I always have to know, it doesn't matter which modality I'm doing, I always have to ask, how did this come to be? Something had to happen to
Yeah.
create this situation. What happened? And I said to her, tell me about his hands. What's happening there? And she said, the hands are beautiful now because he put some special cream, cortisone cream or something,
Oh.
and his hands are perfect. No
Mhm.
problem there. And I said, that's exactly what happened. Because in homeopathy, we understand that when you suppress something on the skin, it's not unusual that it goes inside onto a more a more fundamental level, which can be the, you know, the mental emotional level. So I said, that's what happened. And now that I know that, I'm a little nervous to give you something for him, because it has to bring back this eruption if he wants to be well, right? And I'm a little nervous to do that. So I sat there in the office thinking, what can I do that would be a gentle way of dealing with this mental emotional situation, so that maybe we get him back to himself in some way where he's willing to entertain homeopathy again. So I gave her a combination of remedies that she gave him secretly in his water every day for a few weeks, you know. And when we had a follow-up, she said, well, it's like a miracle. He's back to his old self. His old personality is back. And I said, and what about, you know, the hands? She said, oh yeah, definitely. It came back on his hands. But she said, he doesn't seem too upset about it. So for me, that was a real smack in the head, you know, that Bach Flowers produced exactly the same return of old symptoms that I would expect to see from a well-chosen homeopathic remedy, that it was following the laws of cure as I understand them, without any, I didn't need the homeopathic remedy, that the Bach Flower did the same. It restored his personality, and it went also in the right direction, that it wasn't just putting a Band-Aid over top. I knew that it was working because it recreated, or it allowed his body to re-experience what he had suppressed in order to get there. So that was my first, like, wow moment.
So were you able to cure his hands also? The whatever the eruption occurred?
He didn't follow up with me.
Okay.
So
This
I only,
happened,
I was satisfied that
Yeah.
I did what she asked, and now it's his business. If he wants more help with that, I told her to tell him, don't use that cream again, because, you know, this is why it happened. So I don't know what he did after that. And I mean, okay, I'm a little disappointed, because it would have been nice to follow through, but I don't know if I would have followed with more Bach Flowers at that time. It wasn't enough. I mean, it was a great experience, but I don't know if I would have had the impulse to say, let's go all the way with Bach Flowers. But I had this experience again just last week, where a client came to me specifically for homeopathy. She's looking for a classical homeopath, and she was referred to me by a friend. And she has a very complicated and very long case. I mean, long history of many years of being unwell. So I gave her one dose of a homeopathic remedy, because I'm still, you know, in this space where I think, oh, I don't dare to, you know, she wants homeopathy, I'm going to do homeopathy, but we'll go soft, you know. So I gave her some homeopathy, gave her also some gemotherapy, which is a plant stem cell medicine, and I like it very much. It's a very physical support for drainage, you know, to release some toxic whatever, right? We all have it in our cells, some stored toxic, even viral material, to get it out of your system. And I gave her a combination of Bach Flowers. So I asked her to follow up with me after 2 weeks, and same thing. She has had a whole very profound return of old symptoms from 30 years ago. And I didn't believe it was possible to see that, like, to see such a obvious result, as if I had given her a perfect homeopathic remedy, is what I'm seeing. And I cannot believe that it's from the one dose of something I gave her, because it was a really very superficial kind of prescription. I just wanted to clean the way for more things to happen. And she's had a lot of, you know, even she had, I'll say, an emotional, a psychological return of old symptoms from that period of her life where this old problem was happening. It was very, very profound. So I'm really, we're talking, you and I, at a moment where I'm like stepping over the threshold to say, I only want to work with Bach Flowers now, with Bach Flowers.
And do you know that Bach flowers also have healing responses?
I do. Of course I do now because I see it with
Yeah,
my own eyes.
yeah,
I only would have thought that it would have the capacity to bring up the emotion that's underneath, you know,
yeah.
so that if someone is taking agrimony, for
Mhm.
instance, you know, you can say that a person who is hiding their feelings behind a mask, so at some moment, part of the cure has to be that you show how you're really feeling. And that could be quite dramatic for a person. So I expected that there was an order of,
Mhm.
you know, how the feelings are able to be expressed in a more healthy way
Mhm.
that could look very, you know, difficult to live with for somebody who spent their whole life with a mask. Now
Yeah.
that you're, you know, shouting at your husband or crying or something, that could be very challenging. But I did not believe that they could bring back a strep throat from 30 years ago, or to bring back an eczema that was suppressed with allopathic medicine, right? That I didn't expect that.
Mhm. So, Tracy, I mean, you talked about your client cases, but have you ever solved your own personal issues or any challenges using Bach flowers?
Yes.
Would you like to share?
Yes, and I'll tell you two different situations, because where I'm coming from now in my journey of consciousness and spirituality, personal growth, I understand that, and I know you understand this too, because we just talked about it, but beyond healing, there is a level of activating something more than healing, right? Of activating your genius, I would say, the next level, right?
Mhm.
Your genius would be your connection to the divine, whatever we want to call
Mhm.
it, where you have something very specific and individual to bring into the world. And that we can't get to that genius place until the healing is enough, you know, that we're not just being dragged down by our concern, our human life concerns.
Mhm. Mhm.
So from healing, I can tell you that I had a couple of weeks ago, I was starting to notice something that bothered me a long time ago. And maybe this is a return of old symptoms that I had from some other Bach flowers I took, and I didn't pay really attention to what it was. But I've started to notice that I get an allergy from the cold air. My skin breaks out in hives.
Mhm.
You know, hives,
Oh,
urticaria.
yeah.
Yeah, like little itchy bumps, red and
Mhm.
itchy. And when I go for a walk outside, which I do every day, some parts of my skin are exposed to the cold air. And suddenly, when I come back in the house and I get warm, it becomes very itchy and I get raised bumps. This is something from many years ago. And it's funny because I was scratching my head saying, why do I have this again? And maybe it's really because I was experimenting already
Mhm.
with Bach flowers for a while. But I came into the house and I thought, like, what do I was itching so much, you know, that I want to
Mhm.
scratch and scratch. And what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I just said, I'm going to take, I'm going to try it for myself. I'm going to take impatience.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So I put a couple of drops right on my tongue and, you know, and really it took maybe 20 seconds before I said, okay, it's not itching anymore. Like, that's pretty cool. It came back, the itching came back after 5 or 10 minutes. I took one more dose and then it was gone.
Yeah, that's how
So
fast.
that
Batch
was
flowers.
really nice, you know. I'll tell you that my husband was suffering from shingles. This is herpes zoster.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's very painful and sometimes it can really last a long time. So I've been giving him homeopathy. I've treated many cases of shingles in my life and
Mhm.
it always goes very well with homeopathy. So what I wanted for him, anyway, it's a long story. I made it go away a couple of times completely with homeopathy. The third time it came back in another place. It was on his head and um, it didn't go away completely. It was less, but not gone.
Mhm.
And so it started to really come out with spots that, you know, it was really the real thing. And I gave him remedy after remedy, and it was like, okay, you know, it was okay in that it's not too painful, it's not too bad, whatever. But at one point I wasn't at home, and I told him where to go in my office, and I said, you'll find with my batch remedies willow. Take some willow. And he doesn't, my husband, he doesn't know remedies. I tell him to take this and he takes it, but you know, and later that day he said, well, that last remedy that you gave me was fantastic because the pain is almost gone to nothing. So now again, I could see batch flowers compared with homeopathy, not just, you know, like in addition or something. It was comparing, because for 3-4 days now, he's taking all the best homeopathy I can give him. And, you know, 2-3 doses of willow. And he said, well, that's another universe. That's way better. And for myself on the level of activating, I have done an exercise where I've really matched, or I've mapped all of the batch flowers to the archetypes of consciousness. So for healing and also for activating into genius. So for me, the remedy Serato can activate a person into their, you know, it's about trusting your intuition. So to give you, you know, not just to trust your intuition, but to have a more immediate access to that level of knowledge, which is around us all the time. And we call it intuition, and it comes from time to time, but to be really connected with that place of inner knowing. And I have taken Serato and I go for a walk, and I'm like, my thoughts are on another level. Like I want to be taking notes the whole time, because I'm getting such downloads of like, now I understand something that I didn't know before. Now I understand it. Like I just feel like I was upgraded to another level of knowing some truth.
I'll share with you by my experiment. I mean, the way it happened with you. Once I took Serato and I went for a walk, and you know, remedy names were coming, you know, and I was listening to all these remedy names as if somebody's talking to me, you know.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's wonderful, Serato. So, Tracy, you have figured out some unique way, you know, you call it archetype. What is that? You know, I mean, I wonder like how you select remedies, because there are so many ways to prepare your combination and come up with a number of remedies, you know. So I wonder what's your way? What's your method?
So yeah, I'll tell you that I've been learning for the last few years about what they call archetypal consciousness. So in this view of consciousness, it comes originally from, I guess, from Carl Jung, the psychologist, author, father of modern psychology, right? And passing through other authors. Carolyn Mace made a lot of work with his archetypes. And so the people that I've been studying with have sort of refined this archetypal view into 4 main channels of consciousness. Those are soul, spirit, body, and mind. Each of those have, like, they would call it a channel, okay? But there are also 4 levels for each channel. So the bottom level, where most people are functioning most of the time, is shadow. That's where we're very much a prisoner of survival needs, survival instincts, and also all of our conditioning, our conditioned belief, and everything in our consciousness that is tied to the collective in ways that we don't perceive, right? That we have beliefs and thoughts that are really driven by the collective around us. They don't belong to us personally. We just dip into that belief system and we think it's our own.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be shadow. And the next level is power. Power would represent a pure consciousness where you are in awareness of the present moment. That's where you're not weighed down with fears or issues of self-esteem or lack of ability or being in the past or in the future. You're in the present moment, right? And you have a pure stream of conscious awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the minimum level to get to the next level, which is genius, or they also call it dark consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
because it means that it's the place where the light hasn't even, it's just on the borders. The biggest light is coming in and it's not even there yet. So it's a place where there are no rules, there are no beliefs system, there's nothing tying you to the collective. It's just you and your genius,
Mm-hmm.
your own personal genius. And there's a level above that, which is called hyperconscious, that
Mm-hmm.
is kind of where you can use the hyperconscious archetypes to like really empower you in bringing your genius into the world, right? I mean, genius is nice, but it can't just stay like floating in a pure consciousness. If we want to draw it into our environment, we need, some help. And so it's the power archetypes that provide a framework for the genius to come through and to be turned into matter in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So we have these 4 channels and 4 levels.
Okay.
And so just for instance, the soul channel, the archetype, the shadow archetype is called prostitute, and the power archetype is called lover.
Mm-hmm.
And these have issues of value and worth.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, anyway, that's enough said. I'll talk more about them, okay? But yeah, about belonging and acceptance
Mm-hmm.
is in this channel of soul. And now the spirit is more about you as an individual. So it's called the child and the sovereign. So this is about desire. It's about vision, having a vision, and about responsibility, because the child, is the one that doesn't want responsibility or who takes the wrong responsibility, because taking over someone else's responsibility is also a child activity. Then the body channel is the victim and the warrior. And this has everything to do with physical things, with resources and boundaries and physical ailments, with blame, with judgment, with, everything about feeling victimized. Everything, when we look around us, the whole world is built on victim consciousness at the moment, right? Everything is the fault of something. Everything is, everyone is part of some group that's being abused in some way, and everyone is an activist for some cause. And the truth of the warrior is that there are no victims. It's not possible to be a victim. And the mind channel is the saboteur and the magician. So this is a channel of overthinking things like belief or doubt, evidence, proof, judgment, how others see you. Time is very much in the realm of saboteur magician, right? Running out of time, having not enough time, where we know when you're in power, when you're in the pure consciousness of the present moment, of course, time goes away because it's not a thing. There's no more past or future when you are in the present. But everybody's had the experience of being supremely focused in the present moment, and you accomplish the work of what would take you normally a few weeks or months. You get it done in an hour because you can, because you're present, right? So that's where we can collapse time. So I took these archetypes, actually just the shadow archetypes, and I mapped them onto the Bach Flowers.
So you took only shadow archetypes?
I took only in the beginning. So I did, it's not true because they're all there, but the way I would prescribe, let's say, a remedy, it's a little bit different than in this world of archetypal consciousness. We use a tool called shadow alchemy to get out of the shadow and into power. And it's basically just a recognizing very precisely what your shadow is saying to you, because you hear your shadows with the voice of your inner voice is always talking to you in shadow language, always. And so when you have a situation that's disturbing you in some way, you have to try to identify, what is that voice actually saying to me? Is it saying, I'm going to run out of time, there's no way I can do this in time, you don't have enough time, panic, panic? Or is it saying, what are you thinking? You're not good enough to do this. You don't have the skills that you need. Or is it saying, if you don't get this right, they're going to kick you out of the group. You don't dare to say this because the consequences are too great. You learn how the voices sound, and you try to identify which one of these things is really jerking my chain right now. Which one is driving me to make my next steps? And then you find the power archetype that is in the same channel, and you say things to yourself so that you just blast open the illusion from the shadow. The shadow is always illusion. So they're always looking for one single archetype that's running the show in order to do this shadow alchemy. And when I started to see how can I bring this together with the Bach Flowers, I was reading the descriptions of each flower, personality, remedy. And actually, I have one of the books of Mechthild Scheffer, which I love very much. Do you know that encyclopedia? Yeah. This one is sitting right here in front of me. It's a book that I love very much. And she has really great, very insightful descriptions. And as I was reading them, I thought, there's always two archetypes showing up here. It's like, maybe it's mostly victim, but this one is victim with some child supporting it. This one is victim with saboteur flavor, you know? This one is victim, but there's so much prostitute there. So I started to do two, and I made columns. I just made a spreadsheet, that anyone can do this, you know? I made columns or rows, and I would say, you know, it's mainly a child archetype, but the flavor is saboteur. Or it's mainly a victim archetype, this one, but with some flavor of child. And I started to do them all. And then I made lists of which are all the remedies that are child and saboteur, which are all the flowers that are saboteur and victim. I just played with the pieces. And what I did after that was I started to go into groups on Facebook. And people would write their questions. What do I take if I feel this? You know, this is for my son. He's very much like this. My neighbor has this problem. She says, la, la, la. And I found it was so easy for me to identify and say, okay, this person is in the child because whatever the particular reason would be, she's completely not accepting responsibility for where she arrived now. And there's an overlay of victim because she believes that everything is someone else's fault. And then I don't have them all in my head, so I can't tell you.
I know. I can understand. It will be like a too many.
Yeah. So then I would look on my chart and say, the remedies for that combination are this one and this one. And it seems to me obvious that the best choice is this one. And I would do that again and again and again. And what I found was that my choices were very different from the ones that other people were coming up with, because they were choosing words in the description of the person and saying, fear belongs to Mimulus, and, you know, it feels guilty, that must be pine. And, you know, she's talking about the old days. She needs honeysuckle and she feels very resentful. It should be willow. And when I would take the little, few lines and analyze them in this way, I would come to a remedy that I thought, this is the one that this person needs, And very often when it was the person themselves asking for help, they would say, oh my goodness, that's a good idea for me. That other people were sort of, it's like, I say it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall. We have that phrase, that you just throw spaghetti at the wall and you see which one sticks. And I think it's easy to do that with Bach flowers because we have permission to use a combination. And so people say, so you'll take pine because you're guilty. You'll take honeysuckle because you're thinking about the old days. You'll take clematis because you're daydreaming. But they're not getting you're going to get a superficial healing with that. And I believe that if you can choose the remedy in a profound, in a deep way, then you'll get a deep healing with that remedy. And so that even if I still make a combination, I'm looking for a different reason to combine things. Why do I need to combine them? So I also like very much that some of the different people that I've followed their books about Bach flowers, they talk about phases of decompensation.
Yeah. Crema.
That from the healthy state to a middle state to a very decompensated where they're in big trouble, And it's the same in homeopathy, that we want to start from the most, my hands are going in the opposite direction but you want to go from the most decompensated state to bring them back towards a normal state. So sometimes I'm looking to say, okay, from these remedies that are the good choices for me, do I have at least one that represents the very decompensated state? Because I need to have that to take away the worst layer, the most decompensated layer. So that might be another way that I would use it. And then, there are some people who come to you because Bach flowers are such a good support for a spiritual growth that I want to be able to see, what does this person need for their next phase of development? Where are they blocked in accessing what they need to bring in? What is the next thing? And so then I can use them in a completely different way. And because I have a different expectation, that opens the field between myself and the client for this elevated response to manifest, for a more what's the word? Activating response, more than healing, that I can use them for activating. That it, like you said, that you take Serato and you go for a walk, and it's not like you needed to be healed in something. It gives you something extra. It's a boost to the next level.
I don't use remedy just for healing something. I just test, I just want to use them just to see what shows up,
Yeah, exactly. So I've taken, I often take scleranthus when I feel like I'm procrastinating a decision, right? And it's not something like, I just have a feeling like I want certainty. I know what I need to do. And why am I holding myself back? And I take a few drops of scleranthus and then I say, okay, I'm doing it. And I have taken quite a lot of scleranthus. And so now my actions are coming faster. And I'm not diluting. Like when you delay to take an action that your genius is telling you, the longer you delay, the more you dilute what the result you get from that action. You dilute the nice result. So I don't want diluted results. I want powerful results. Means you have to go right away without a lot of, but I don't know. Am I making the right decision? What happens if I get it wrong? that's where you drag it all back down into the shadow. And I don't want to be there. So I just take, you know, I mean, I don't necessarily take scleranthus in the moment. I've taken it a lot up until now. And now I find that my decisions are coming much more quickly to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody has like different experiences, you know, based on what they were not doing right previously. And
Yeah.
we become aware of it, you know, once we take the remedies, you know, with the effect, we become aware, you know, what is shifting within us.
Absolutely.
So Tracy, thank you very much. I think we
Thank
talked
you
a
for
lot
this. It
and
was fun.
like wonderful, you know, we got wonderful information and enlightened. I mean, you enlightened us in many ways, you know, because I was not aware of this archetype thing. And I'm sure like if any homeopathy is going to listen to this, they are going to maybe they will start using Bach Flower remedies and they will experiment and find their own, what do you say, their own
system to use them.
You know, they will get their own breakthroughs. So thank you. And yeah,
thank you for the invitation. This was lovely.
I don't know, like if you're teaching this archetype or if you're writing a book. So if I mean, yeah.
My dog is barking so loudly. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Oh, what a noise. Yes, I'm teaching this. I'm not formally yet, but I do invite people to experiment with me on a journey of 12 weeks to have weekly consultations where we work on the shadow alchemy together with the Bach Flowers, to do both the healing and the activation level. So to, you know, in 3 months to really make a dramatic shift in consciousness, so that you can start to really work with your genius archetypes to bring your true genius into this present 3D life around you. That I think is an exciting thing. So that's where I would be both teaching the archetypes, learning how to work with the shadow alchemy, and then also using the Bach flowers to enhance the results and get there faster.
I think it's a wonderful idea, a unique idea, because you are teaching, I mean, and making them ready. I mean, they are teaching and also they're experimenting on themselves.
Exactly. So, and I think that's the way to learn.
Yourself.
You can't really learn it without feeling it on yourself.
Yeah,
you know?
That's true. Yeah. That's true. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. This was lovely.